What's up, everybody? This is Dr. Nick with Leverage Media. Welcome to episode 2 of Ask Dr. Nick. Been getting a ton of questions this week. Got a lot of really good feedback on last Sunday's Ask Dr. Nick, so I'm excited to keep going with this. We talked to so many different doctors throughout the week, and a lot of the questions are really good ones and ones that could be asked by really almost any chiropractor, regardless of what level they're at. So I wanted to start this show basically to help out chiropractors that maybe just, for whatever reason, I don't get a chance to talk to them one-on-one. So this way they can watch it at their own speed, and maybe as we build up more of these episodes, they can start to go back and learn more and all that good stuff. So we are going to do, last week I kind of just answered all the questions that I had accumulated the couple days before once I came up with the idea. I think I'm going to give it a little bit more structure this week and going forward. So we're going to ask, or I'm going to answer 5 questions that I've gotten throughout the week. That way it'll leave some room. I'm also on Instagram Live as well as Facebook Live right now. So I think what we're going to do is every Sunday at 4 p.m. Central is going to be the time that I do this, unless I'm traveling. But usually when I travel on Sundays, I get in early in the day. So I should be good to go by 4 p.m. Every Sunday. And then I'll just let you guys know if it's going to be a different time. So we're going to be doing this Facebook Live as well as Instagram Live. If I can get a third phone, I'll probably do, or a second phone, I'll do YouTube Live at some point, just so that it makes it easy for wherever you consume your content. You can ask your questions live, but then also we'll be taking the audio and putting it onto the podcast as well. So if you do have a question and you are live, you can either click on the Zoom link, and if you have your phone or if you have a laptop, so that we can share our video, I can actually pull you up as a panelist, and we can chat a little bit. So the reason why I'm doing 5 questions is I think I should be able to get those done in about 25, 30 minutes. And then that'll leave some time for any live questions that we might have. So if you do have those, please be sure to hop on. And after I'm done asking these or answering these 5 questions, I'll look in the chats and see if there's anything that anybody popped in there, and I'll try to answer those, or I'll save those for next week. All right, so the first question comes from a woman that I talked to earlier this week. Her name is Sarah, and she asks, what are things people should outsource or get a consultant for versus trying to do for themselves when starting out? So when you're starting out, there's not a ton that I would recommend outsourcing, or definitely I wouldn't get a consultant for. Let's talk about the difference between those two for a second. So the difference between outsourcing and getting a consultant for, the consultant is going to give you some ideas, and then you're going to have to go do it. The outsourcing is going to be you hire somebody to basically execute either a plan that you have or potentially a plan that they have. That's usually not really outsourcing, though. It's more like hiring an agency or hiring someone to do it because you don't have the idea. Now, I guess I'll go back. I shouldn't have said that you should not be hiring a consultant early on. I just think that you probably would be better off consuming free content, maybe buying a course, early on, just to get jump started. But the thing that's going to allow you to start really learning is doing. And there's really no wrong way to do any of this stuff. There's some ways that are more effective than others, but anything you're going to learn so much from just doing that you'll just start to get better and better. Just like with this, this week we added in the Instagram Live, because right before I went on, I was like, oh, I've got my phone, because I do this off my computer, and I've got my phone. I could do it on Instagram Live. We're starting to get some followers there. And if somebody's watching this on Facebook Live, maybe, or listening on the podcast, maybe they'll go and follow me on Instagram or on my Facebook page. So doing is going to force you to try to figure it out, because especially if you're a successful person, you're probably wanting to do things that are going to be time effective. Just knowing who you are, you're a mom and you got things that you need to get to every week. So I'm sure you don't have a lot of time to be wasting your time. So if you're going to be doing content, if you're going to be doing marketing, I would recommend trying to be as effective as you can be. And that's only going to come from you trying things, being like, that was good, that wasn't, and then trying to fix the parts that weren't good. Once you get to a point where you kind of understand it, then you know a little bit more of what to look for, whether it's in a consultant or in outsourcing. And that's where you can start to hire people to execute your strategy, or you'll run across people, I have lots of conversations and they're all on different levels based on who I'm talking to and the amount of information that they have. So if somebody's at a very starter level, we're having a very basic conversation. If somebody's at a more advanced level, I can tell, and that way I'm able to give them more advanced strategies. You on the other side of it, you'll be able to start to understand, does this person who I'm talking to really get it? Do they really understand what it is that I'm looking for, and are they going to be able to execute that? So when you're hiring an agency or a marketing person in-house, you're able to decipher whether this person really gets it or not. So let me make sure I answer that. What are the things people should consider or should outsource, get consultant for versus trying to do for themselves when starting out? I would do it when you're starting out. I would definitely do it on your own. Try it out. There's so much information on YouTube, so many blogs out there on the best ways to do it. So always start with the end in mind. What is the goal that you want? And then search from there. All right, and then you had a second question. What's the most important statistics to be looking at, and what do they mean? So statistics are tricky because you have to. It all depends on what it is you're trying to get out of, and we'll talk about marketing because I think that's what you're asking about. We'll talk about marketing stats. So one of my mentors, Dennis Yu, he always talks about goals, content, and targeting. So the goals, if you want to get more likes on your page, that's a goal. If you want to get more new patients walking through the door, that's a goal. If you want to get more votes for, best chiropractor in any town, USA, that's a goal. All of those goals are very different, and all of those goals have specific types of content and targeting that go along with that. So what I mean by that is, first you have to come up with what your goal is. So let's say it's new patients. Your content needs to be around either an offer to come in as for a first visit. It needs to be value-based content that somebody can learn about what it is that you do or how you can help them. So you're going to be starting out on a very basic level. You're going to be talking to them about their conditions. You're going to try to help them get a quick win, talk to them about that. With chiropractic, it's normally getting them out of pain. So, you want to talk to them about how you can help them get out of pain quickly. So that would be the content that you would create for that goal. Now, if you're trying to become voted best chiropractor in any town, USA, that is going to be different, because now you're going to want to you're going to want to create content asking for a vote. If it's on the local newspaper or magazine or whoever's doing it, your content is going to be around talking about your practice, being part of the community. It's very different than a first visit. Then you get to your third step, which is targeting. You're going to target different people. Let's take those two examples. For new patients, you're going to have to target people that haven't come in your office before. That by definition makes them a new patient. For best chiropractor any town USA, you want to target people that have been in your practice, people that are fans of yours. So it all depends on what you're doing. Let's focus in mainly on the new patient stuff, because that's mostly that's what most practitioners are focused on when it comes to their social media. Mistakenly, but still, it's the way it is. So the number one statistic that you have to start with is, are you getting your message out? So first you have to see, all right, I'm spending money with Facebook. Is it being delivered is it being delivered, period? Because if they disapprove your ad and you think it's running, and it's not running, you're going to be really disappointed with the results. So first is it getting distribution? All right. And now, depending on what platform you're on, there's going to be different types of distribution, or different levels of distribution that you're going to get for the same ad spend. So for example, if you spend $100 on Facebook and you're running an ad, and it's just like an offer ad, nobody's going to really care that much, like it's not adding a ton of value, you're probably going to spend between $15 and $20 per 1,000 impressions. So that's how Facebook charges, is every 1,000 times they show it to someone in their newsfeed, every 1,000 times they're going to charge you this amount. So let's say it's $20. So if you've got a $100 budget, you're going to get to show it to about 5,000 people. All right. So now you've shown it to 5,000 people. The next thing you want to look at is you want to look at, are people engaging with it? Do I have a good amount of clicks? Do I have a high enough click-through rate? So a really good click-through rate on say like an ad or something would probably be in the like 1.52% range. Anything above that is doing really well. Anything below that, like if you're at like 0.5%, 0.75%, maybe even 1%, you maybe want to look at the ad creative. It may mean that your messaging is off. Maybe the picture doesn't really represent with what the copy is talking about. So if it's not getting a lot of clicks, you're going to want to go back to the drawing board and look to see if there's anything you can improve on. All right. Now, once they click on it, they need to go somewhere. So for a new patient offer, they're either going to go, like they do a Facebook offer, or I'm sorry, a Facebook form, it'll just stay on Facebook and they'll either fill out the form or they won't. You can make it to where it automatically fills out their name, phone number, and email address, or you're going to send them to a landing page if you're doing an offer. I don't recommend sending them just to your website. So send them somewhere where they can opt in so that you can capture that information and then follow up with them from there. So once they have clicked through, now we have to look at, is the landing page or the Facebook form converting? So I would say that on average, a landing form for like a regular new patient offer probably converts at around 10, 15%. If you do above that, you're going to have really good results. If you do below that, you're probably going to have a high cost per lead. So make sure that that it's very easy for people to opt in. So those are the statistics that I would look at once they make it there. And then that becomes a lead. Now, once we have a lead, now you have to look at your KPIs. So if you're running ads, you have to say to yourself, this is what a new patient is worth. So let's say the average chiropractor across the country, I would say the most, not the most, like the top 20% of successful offices, I would say that their average lifetime value on a patient, and this is like anybody coming through the door, like new patients, any day one, that they're worth about $1,500. Let's say that the average across the profession is $1,000. So now you just have to do the math. It becomes a math problem. So let's say you're running your ads yourself and you're spending $500 per month. And let's say you're not very good at it and you get 5 leads out of the 500. So just to make the math easy. So now your cost per lead is $1,000 or is $100. Okay. So that means for every lead you spent $100 and you got one. All right. Your lifetime value is $1,000. So now it's just how many of those leads can you get in for day one? How many of those day ones can you get to day two? How many of those day twos can you sign up for care? And I would imagine that most chiropractors are doing some level of treatment plan. If it's 6 visits, 12 visits, 36 visits, doesn't really matter, for them to say yes to starting care. So if you've got a $100 lead, then let's say you have 5 of those for the month and you're able to get a hold of 2 of those. All right. So now you have 2. That means that, and I'm sorry, and they make an appointment and they show up for day one. They show up for their first visit. That means that for an actual appointment, for 2 of them, you've spent $500 to get 2 appointments, $250 for each one of those appointments. And then let's say that one of those starts care. All right. That means that for each person that started care that month, you got 1 person to start care. You spent $500. That means a start was $500. Your lifetime value is $1,000. That's a good deal. So even those are terrible numbers. Those are bad, 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 right? But you still are able to be profitable on your marketing. Now, the way that I look at marketing is if you're using an agency and you're also doing ad spend, you have to combine that completely. Like that's all in one. But as long as you can if you can collect one more dollar than you're putting out, and I usually look at it on a quarterly basis, not a monthly basis, but every quarter, if you can get one more dollar back than you put out, you're winning, because you get all of that brand exposure. Now, this assumes that you're doing some kind of content along with the lead gen, because I don't recommend just doing lead generation. But if you could put out all that content and offers and get more money than you spent, then I consider that a win, because that one patient, if your back end protocols are good, that one patient can turn into 3. The other 2 are worth another $1,000 on average. So now that 1 month's worth of advertising generated 3. Now, the way that I track referrals is in my EHR, I will put whoever basically every referral tree starts with one person, right? So I always look back to who the start of that referral chain was, and I put in EP, meaning this established or existing patient, and then dash wherever that person came from. So some of our existing patient stats will still be like existing patient yellow pages. I haven't run yellow pages in years, but because a person that was referred in another person, because we keep that chain going, I can now still give credit to the yellow pages for that patient. Now, the yellow pages is dried up, so there's no point in continuing to spend money to try to get new referral trees out of that. But it makes me feel a little bit better for those last couple of years where I lost my ass on. Hopefully that was probably a lot, but really you have to look at how much does it cost to get a patient in, and that's probably the most important statistic. How much does it cost to get a patient to start care, and is that lower than your lifetime value? Because you remember, you have to assume that person's going to work like a regular patient, and that they're going to stay around for as long as regular patients stay around, and refer the way regular patients refer. All right. So hopefully that was helpful. All right. Next is my buddy Mike. Talked to him earlier this week. He is a doctor in Michigan. At what point in practice would you recommend someone bringing on an associate or independent contractor? And is there any instance where the answer wouldn't be when you're at max capacity or something similar? So absolutely, there are instances where the answer wouldn't be when you're at max capacity. When you're at max capacity, now you're starting to make, I think you're starting to make bad decisions. So if you've ever lost a front desk person unexpectedly, or an associate or anything like that, the decision-making process on hiring is not going to be as solid as the decision-making process when you're at 80% capacity. So with any position, I always like to, where it's like a delivery of service, I always like to, one of my mentors taught me this, when the one gets to 80% capacity, you start looking for the next one. You bring that one in, they can train while that person is going up to 100% capacity. By the time they get there, the second one is trained, they can now go up to 80% capacity. Then you bring on the third one, the second one can train that, or the first one can train that. So you start to, I definitely would not wait until you're at max capacity to start bringing on associates or independent contractors. So just to tell you a little bit of a story about my process with, I don't do independent contractors. Actually, let me see if your other question is, okay. So there was another question that we had been talking about that I think would be valuable here. So when you said associate or independent contractor, I assume you mean associate as an employee, like a W-2 employee, or an independent contractor. So I am not a fan of independent contractors, only because I like to, as an independent contractor, they technically can just come and go as they please. They have their own rules. They can have their own name. And I just think it confuses the patients. I think it confuses the staff. And I think the savings that comes with an independent contractor versus an associate isn't worth all of the headache that is involved. So the only difference, like in my office, between an associate, like an employee associate and an independent contractor, would be the employer part of the FICA tax and paying their payroll taxes for them. Those are the only real differences. And so the 5% or whatever it is for the employer side of the FICA tax, to me, is worth making sure that I've got consistent protocols. The staff understands like what everybody's role is. And it just allows it to be, I think, a better functioning unit. Now, that's not to say that other people haven't been very successful with independent contractors. I know that I've got a client that they have, I think they have like 11 doctors in their office, and I think maybe 8 of them are independent contractors. And I mean, they do great, that like they are completely happy. They've got a good system for it. So they've figured it out, obviously, but I'm a big fan of just employees. So anyway, the story of when I started to get associates, I had bought my first practice in October 2006. I started my second practice from scratch October 2007. So like a year to the day, I started my second practice. And in February 2008, I had a heart attack from the stress of running 2 practices. So as I was laying in my hospital bed, I was like, man, I love chiropractic, but I am not willing to die for running a couple of mediocre practices. So I at that point I was on a mission to get an associate. So I ended up buying a course on how to have associates. Learned a lot from that in my mind, but I didn't really follow many of the rules other than like how to hire them. Went ahead and hired them. The first one was an absolute disaster. At some point, I'll figure out how I can tell that story. The second one was my associate is still with me to this day, 10 years later. And what a disaster I was when I hired him. Had no idea what was going on. I was going through the drama of getting rid of the first one, which was even more of a disaster. But luckily he, stuck it out, and now I think we're both doing very well in the relationship. But I was seeing, the reason I hired associates at that point was because I was 3 days a week in each office, and I was missing out on new patients because I wasn't in the office I wasn't in the office, my Springfield office on Tuesday, or I wasn't in my Petersburg office on Wednesday. So I was missing new patients. So I was like, I just need to get somebody in here that could be in there full time. So I think that I was seeing maybe like 40 a week in my Petersburg office and maybe 30 a week in Springfield. So definitely not max capacity. But I realized that A, I needed to be full time, and B, I was not very good at being like the doctor and also the business person. So I realized then that I needed to pick between one or the other, and I picked being more of the business person. So in the transition from getting to where I could be the business person full time, I needed associates that could start to take over some of these patients, so it wasn't completely on me to help grow the practice. So yeah, I'm not a big believer of I talk to people, and they know that I don't live in the town that I practice in, and that I'm in my practice only a few days a month, and they're always interested in like how I did that. And I really just did it. Like I just ripped off the Band-Aid. I've always one of my top core value is freedom. And so like being able to be location free, so that I didn't have to physically be in an office at the same time every single day, that was really important to me. And so I'm willing to give up some of the abundance to buy the freedom. So I was willing to give up some of my income to pay for an associate. And then when it came time to replace myself with my second associate, that's where I said to myself, I'm like, listen, because I was paying on a percentage back then. I said, if I can just grow the practice 30% without seeing any of the patients, I'll be able to make the same money and not have to see any of those patients. So you've got to think about it in a way to where if it's going to expand your hours, if it's going to free you up to do more of what you're great at, if it's going to allow you more opportunities to get out and speak or network or whatever it is that's going to bring in more business, I think that it's a great opportunity. And as long as you can, just like with any employee, as long as you can, rationally make sense of it in your head in terms of business, paying for themselves, I think the faster you can do it, the better. I know people that launch offices with associates, which, I love that idea. It's just a matter of, do you have enough business? You don't want to cannibalize your own practice to, to pay for another one. But if paying for that gives you more freedom to go do things that are gonna 3, 5, 10x your opportunities, I think that's a really good way to go. So no, do not wait until you're at your max capacity. Let's see. Okay. With what seems like a sea of SEO companies, all promising the same top 3 results, etc., how would you recommend people filter through the garbage companies, and how much is a reasonable amount to spend on those types of services in terms of percentage of total monthly revenue, so it's applicable to every size practice? Okay, so basically, lots of SEO companies out there. How would you recommend people filter through the garbage companies, and how much is a reasonable amount to spend on those types of services? So I do not think that SEO companies are worth much anymore, unless you had just a super specific kind of practice that you really wanted to show up for. I just think that Google ads are so much more predictable. I think that they're so much easier to control, that I think that if you want to show up when somebody's Googling something, I think that Google ads are a better opportunity. I also think content marketing done the right way is a better opportunity than spending $1,000 a month on SEO. So to answer your question, how would you recommend people filter through the garbage companies? With SEO, I feel like you can kind of get a sense of that. Here's the thing about anything digital. I don't think that there's any value in local digital companies. So if they just do SEO for Chicago-based businesses, or they just do they just take on any type of business, and they just happen to meet them at the Chamber of Commerce or whatever it is, those are not going to be the best at what they do. Now, if you just happen to run into somebody that lives in your town, and that's a different thing. But if they're targeting you because they live down the street from you and they can go to coffee, these companies that are really good, they don't need to do that. And we're here in Chicago, and we have currently we have 3 Chicagoland clients, but it's just random that they live in Chicago. There's no benefit to them being in Chicago other than we can go get coffee sometime, I guess, but they get the same level of service as somebody who lives in Alaska. So with digital, and this includes SEO, Facebook ads, content, any of that stuff, that local companies it drives me nuts when people are oh, one of my patients does it, or oh, this company in town does it, or my wife has worked in marketing before. Them being close to you doesn't matter. I would look, if I was doing SEO, kind of if I'm telling you that I'm a content marketing agency, and you go to any of my channels and I have no content on there, that would be a red flag, right? So for a long time, up until this last few weeks, I've been real quiet in terms of content for Leverage or for my personal brand, but we've continued to create it for my office for forever. So I can show you like, this is what we do. Like you know, I eat my own dog food. So if an SEO company is telling you how great they are, I would ask them what are their key, like what are the top searches that they want to show up for, like their company. And if they can't get themselves to the top, I mean, you would think that they would be spending some time. And it's just like these this is a good example. It's like these Facebook ad agents, I'm going to say agencies, these kids that run Facebook ads for chiropractors. Those, if you notice, hardly any of them run Facebook ads. And if they do, they'll run it for a little bit, they won't be successful, and they'll stop doing it. What they all do is they all friend request you and then just like assault your news feed with all of their great results until you finally like topple over, right? So you know, I'm friends with a lot of them, and so like my news feed, it's a lot of that, but it's not always a lot of their paid ads, right? They don't have any like complex strategy for like how they're getting clients outside of asking for referrals and organic traffic from being friends with people on Facebook. So that, or like cold email. So that would be one way to like filter through the garbage companies. But it's easy to, like, when you're a digital company, it's pretty easy to like make yourself look like you know what you're doing. So I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good way to tell you to like be able to filter these things out. With digital companies, it's usually pretty easy to find out how well they do. In chiropractic, you know, to be honest, like some of the website companies that help a lot of chiropractors, if you look in the areas where they have websites, they're usually near the top. The problem is I just don't think SEO matters as much anymore. So I don't think that it's like, it's just not worth paying a lot of money for. Like all of these website companies that are in chiropractic, you could probably get like a $200 a month package and have the website and the SEO done. I also think that you know what, here's a good tip. With SEO, a lot of it is set it and forget it. Like you do it the one time, and it's not something you have to like constantly be updating for a local chiropractic office. Like if you have one of these websites, you know, like a chiropractic website company, I don't know the back end of it, but if at $100 or $200 a month, I seriously doubt they're spending a bunch of time going through and optimizing your back end. So I would say getting your website set up correctly, like paying somebody one time, you know, $1,000, $1,500. I'm all for that. Like getting all of your pages optimized, having them teach you the like the on-page stuff, the off-page stuff. I think that's all very important. But I just think the ongoing like $500 a month, $800 a month, $1,000 a month, I just don't see how you would ever get that money back. What I do recommend with SEO is if you're creating content, if you're creating blog posts on your website, you're posting them once a month, 1,000 word blog posts once a month on some topic, and you've got some local keywords in there, that's going to be really helpful for your SEO, especially when people are searching for conditions in your area. Because again, you don't care if like somebody in Chicago sees your blog if you're in you know, Sacramento. So just make it sure that it's very Sacramento centric and it's around these conditions. So the other question you had was, what is a reasonable amount to spend on these types of services? So for SEO services, in terms of percentage of monthly revenue, oh man, like, I don't know, low, like real low, like less than 1% low. I think that a good amount to spend on marketing is 10%. But really, if you're getting a good return on any marketing, I mean, as much as you can afford. So 10% total on your monthly revenue poured back into marketing to bring in new people, I think is a really good number. But what part of that should be SEO? Like I said, like less than 1%. There are so many other things you could be spending your money on. Let me see. Okay. This one's from my buddy Pete. Pete Camiolo with the Remarkable CEO. If you guys have not heard of the Remarkable CEO, you should definitely check it out. A lot of the stuff that we've been talking about on this Q&A were are things that are covered that teaches you how to get out of being a business owner with a job and get into more of a role of a CEO. So I think it's probably it's the best chiropractic coaching around that topic in terms of like starting to help chiropractors get into the role of CEO and start to set up their freedom. All right. Pete's question is, should I keep repeating the same content quarterly or annually, or do I need to keep coming up with new content? So I definitely wouldn't, I wouldn't just like make a set of content, let's say 10 videos or 5 blogs. I wouldn't just make that content and then just put it on repeat and never create new content. That being said, if you've got a winner, I wouldn't bury it just because it's like the calendar changed. So we used to run this plantar fasciitis video that did really well, that showed, you know, really just like how we help with plantar fasciitis. And every time we used to run it for like $100 a month. And every time that we ran it, because we'd give it a little break and then we'd run it again. Every time that we ran it, we would get phone calls from it. Every single time. Like back then we didn't really have as complicated of a or not complicated, but as advanced of a strategy as we do now with like capturing leads and following up with them and all of that. But back then it was pretty much just like, hey, call the office. And we would get, I would guess that probably 5% of our new patients every month we ran that video would come in for plantar fasciitis. So I think that finding the videos or the blog posts that really work well, mainly videos because you can push those out more, but the videos that work really well, I would cycle them. So, you know, you'll eventually get it to where just people get tired of seeing it and you'll want to give it a break, but then you'll want to bring it back. Because if you're creating consistent content, you'll start to recognize what resonated and what didn't. And that'll also help you start to create content as you go forward. But if you've got a winner, man, keep pumping that winner. But I also think that you need to be creating content like on a consistent basis. Like, I just don't think that there's a time where it's like, okay, I've got my content, because it's like you could say it in a different way that second time. Let me give you an example. Let's say, like, let's use you as an example, Pete. So for let's say that you were talking about, so they in the CEO program, they talk about 4 different seasons of a chiropractic career. So it's launch, build, scale, and exit. So let's say you were talking, and their ideal clients are really like in the build and the launch phase. So that's where like 80% of their content would be created around. The launch, it's great content to like help out and help, you know, future potential clients. So a lot of these questions that I get are from people that aren't really like my ideal client, just because they haven't reached a level yet that would allow them to afford our services. But I love adding value to those people, because when they do get, because hopefully I can help them with some advice and some content to get them to that stage faster, and then they'll remember that I added some value then, and maybe they'll hire me once they get to a certain point. So with Pete, he's trying to find doctors that are building and scaling. Okay, but he can create content around exiting and launching as well. So let's talk about scaling. So let's say he has a piece of, let's say you have, I'm talking to you, Pete. Let's say you have a piece of content that is around scaling that just crushed. It was about how the right way to hire associates, right? So like what we were just talking about on the last question, or the second to last question, what's the best way to hire associates? All right. So you create that content. It's a winner. It's just like, man, that was awesome. You could just keep repeating that, of course. Like you can give it a month off, run it for another month, give it 2 months off, run it for another month. Whatever you do to where you see that you're getting good traffic and you're getting a good click-through rate and all that. But when you, if you know that that's a good topic, because it's not just like, you know, your sweet beard looked really good that day, which I imagine it did, but it was probably like the angle that you took, like the content that you gave, right? So the next time you can create that around that same topic, but maybe give it a different spin. Like maybe give it a, I'm trying to think of like what a good example is. What's the best way to, okay, here's one. So you are, the first time you just said the best way to hire associates, right? Maybe the next time it's what's the best way to hire your first associate. So even though it's probably a lot of the same content, that the title of that, how to hire your first associate, is going to be, it's going to speak more directly to someone than just how to properly hire an associate. So if you are speaking right to that person's pain point, if I make a video about like the best ways to create content, but then I say the best ways to create content for a pediatric practice, that pediatric practice, the more you can niche down, the more that someone who has a pediatric practice is going to interact with that content. The broader you get, the more people you might reach with it, but also the less impact you're going to have. So I think that yes, you can definitely like rotate and keep, you'll have to like keep an eye on when people get tired of watching it, especially if you're doing a paid strategy. You can see, like right now we are running our Gary V interview, and we're in, let's say the 16th. So we're probably almost 3 weeks in to running ads for people to opt in for the full Gary V interview. So if you haven't listened to the full Gary V interview, go to Gary V, just the letter V, GaryVinterview.com, and you can get the full interview. But we've seen our leads go kind of just like slowly down and down and down and down and down. We're starting to get more like non-chiropractors opting in, whereas when it first started, it was just like I recognized half the names, and when I looked them up on Facebook, I could tell they were chiropractors. So now it's like we're either going to have to like give it a break, we're going to have to like refresh it, we're going to have to just do some different things with it, maybe make some new ad creative. Not really sure, but because we haven't reached all the chiropractors in the country yet, because I see like how many people have been reached, and it's not, you know, there's 60,000 chiropractors in the country, probably 50,000 of them are actively like you know, on a weekly basis on Facebook. So we're still only at maybe 30,000 people reached, and probably 5 to 10,000 of those are non-chiropractors, like they're like PTs or, you know, trainers or people that work in offices or whatever. So there's still people to be reached. We've just got to get more creative now with that. So the same idea when you are creating that content, or I'm sorry, when you're recycling that content, you just have to be cognizant of that the second time you run it, if you run it to the same audience, it may not be as effective. And then you really need to, or maybe it starts out effective, but then you just got to keep an eye on when you're getting out of KPI with the different marketing metrics that you are following. One thing I'll say about repeating content for blog posts is if you write a really good blog post, you don't have to rewrite the blog post, especially for like a local chiropractor. It's not as important. You could just add to it. You could just like continue to like perfect the blog, as opposed to you have to change it enough for it to be seen as new content on Google. I would recommend writing a new one with a different angle. So like if you're on low back pain, it could be like 7 natural things to do to help your low back pain. The new one could be like 5 stretches to do for low back pain. But I would suggest writing new content when it comes to blogs, just because Facebook really likes those. But if your blogs suck, I would just maybe, instead of just like restarting from it, I would much rather you have one really good blog than have 3 like 250 word blogs that no one cares about. So so I hope that helped you. All right, let me check to see if we have any questions here on Facebook. We do not, I don't think. Oh, I'm on the wrong page. Hold on one second. Sorry for all the podcast listeners. I always remember that you guys, like when I just go quiet as I'm searching through things, that it's not as helpful. Let's see here. Let me see if there's any. questions on Instagram? Don't think there is. And just pulling up Facebook here. And none there. Okay. So I hope you guys got a lot of value. I feel like I've talked for a long time here. So some of these I kind of ranted on, but I think they're important. So we're going to be doing this every week. If you have any questions, please reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, email, DM, text, whatever. Just do hashtag Ask Dr. Nick, and I would be more than happy to answer any of your questions. We are also doing some videos on social with the Ask Dr. Nick questions. So I would love it if you could send those to me via video. Try to keep them to about anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute, because my answer has to be, we have to kind of keep them total under 2 minutes. So I would love to get some questions from people that I don't know. I've asked a lot of the people that I know or that I talked to already for questions, but I would love to hear from anybody that's listening. You know, I always like to get feedback on any of this content, really, but especially this one, because I just, one of the things that Gary Vee always talks about, the reason why he does so much Q&A in so many interviews is because he loves getting questions that maybe he hasn't thought about before. And I mean, I don't think any of those questions that I answered today are things that I would like think to talk about. So I would love it if you guys could give me some new angles to think about. And if you can do that with video, even better. If you do it with video, I can almost guarantee you that you're gonna get it onto an episode pretty quickly. And then if you want to be on live and jump on here and ask me whatever question you want, I'm more than happy to do that. I'll always post the link when I do these lives. I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna shoot for 4 p.m. Central Time each Sunday. So yeah, look forward to hearing from you guys, and I'll see you next week.